Thank you. Imagine you're sitting in a small room. You're waiting by the locked metal door for your turn to eat. You don't get to decide when you eat. You just have to wait. Sometimes they'll let you out to eat with other people. Other times, they don't let you leave. There are people right now who are having this experience, and I bet there's some of you who have had this experience too. What I'm talking about is a daily occurrence for people in prison. The question is why? Why am I talking about that? Because there's an investment opportunity for those of you who want to help others when they are at a rock bottom. I'm sorry, let me introduce myself. I am your self-appointed human investment advisor. I specialize in investing in others for the purpose of making the world a better place. I do this by investing in those who are easily overlooked due to their struggling position. And you too can make investments by helping people who feel like nobody become a somebody. You ready? No, you're not ready yet. You're a sophisticated TED audience who wants to hear something credible from this suit talking to you before even considering his message. Fair enough. Since 2013, I've had the privilege of making over hundreds of investments with others, specifically with inmates and ex-convicts. And I'll be honest, I've had varying results with these investments. Some of these investments are working one-on-one with guys just out of prison, helping them find jobs, like my friend here, Blaze, who now is an e-commerce expert. I've walked with others through their struggle with addiction, watching some of them recover and saying goodbye to others. I've also had opportunities to lead programs in prison focused on self-improvement for other inmates. But you know what? I am also a product of human investment. Yeah, I am standing here today because of people who invested in me when I was at my rock bottom. Do you remember the summer of 2011? Nothing major happened as far as globally speaking that I can think of, but what were you doing? Floating the river? Maybe trying out that new fad called stand-up paddling? Or did you get a second job, maybe a summer job for some extra cash in the pocket? Okay, maybe not a career choice, but hey, you know, extra money was cool. Or was that the summer that you took a vacation to Europe? Well, while you were doing that, I was this guy. An angry felon getting fed food through a slot in a locked metal door, keeping me in an 8x10 cell, really not much bigger than this dot I'm standing on. No, that's not my best look. See, I was sentenced to 6 years in prison for armed robbery, yet I still continue to act in a destructive way. Even after that punishment, which you'd think is enough, no. While in prison, I was still making alcohol, doing drugs, fighting, gambling. So eventually, they started throwing me into an even smaller living space, solitary confinement. We also call it the hole. While you were enjoying the freedoms life has to offer, I was alone, depressed, ashamed, and trapped behind a door I had no power to open. Everywhere I looked was something I hated, especially the person in the mirror. I felt worthless. But haven't we all been trapped in some type of prison we've wanted to get out of? For some of us, literally in prison. But for many of us, it was a desperate situation which held us back. What was your prison moment? What did your rock bottom look like? Maybe it was going through a divorce, being trapped and held captive by feelings of loss, sadness, and loneliness. Or perhaps a death in the family shook your entire belief on life and what it meant. Or like many people, maybe you had a time where you struggled with an addiction to drugs or alcohol or some other form, under the control and feeling helpless. Those are heavy moments in our lives. So who helped you through yours? Why did they want to help you? What did they see in you? And what did they do for you? Look at that. You are also a product of human investment. An investment that is, no doubt, priceless in your life. And the very reason why I'm talking to you today. Let's go back to 2011. So after spending a miserable summer in the hole, I was finally released back to prison. This is when I got to meet my new prison counselor, Mr. Morrison. So I get called out to his office. I'm walking across the yard, basically a shell of a man. I had no confidence in myself because I kept failing at life. Almost everything I'd ever done in life, I'd failed at. Whether it was work, relationships, sports, I was a failure. Not only that, I knew I was a bad friend, a bad brother, and a bad son. Because people didn't even want to talk to me very much anymore because there was nothing I could say. At least nothing positive. So I walk into this office and sit down across the desk from this large man who obviously spent years bodybuilding. He sat there, leaned back in his chair, hands clasped behind the back of his head, with a wall of Oregon Ducks memorabilia behind him. The thing that I noticed was he was so relaxed, so confident. He looked so free. He looked exactly opposite of how I felt. We seemingly had nothing in common, well, except being Duck fans, of course. However, Mr. Morrison could relate to me because, like each of us, he had experienced difficult times. And you should know, he's a very sophisticated investor. And even though he saw someone who was going through a difficult time, what he did see was a spark of potential or value in me that I had no clue was there. And really, most inmates in prison, this might surprise you, feel this way. They want to stop living the life they've lived. They're tired of it. They want something different. But they just don't believe they can do it. They don't have the confidence to get there. And they need someone to encourage them and guide them out of their rock bottom, out of their prison. Sadly, most prison inmates don't ever get a chance to meet a Mr. Morrison. Take a moment. Do you know someone who could use a Mr. Morrison? Someone who is struggling? Maybe you do have a friend or family member who is in prison for a poor choice they made. Or perhaps you see a coworker who's always seems stressed about life. Whoever just came to mind right now, hold on to their thought. Hold on to that thought, because they may be your next big investment. Like I said, Mr. Morrison was a very sophisticated investor, and he quickly identified me as someone to invest in. However, it was his unique approach in communicating with me that really made an impact. You see, instead of telling me what I should or shouldn't do, he asked me what I wanted to do, who I wanted to be. And then he listened to my responses. This approach, this type of communication is unique in prison because the normal communication between prison staff and inmates is usually a sharp, non-negotiable command. I was told when to stand up, sit down, when to eat, take a shower, when to talk, definitely to shut up. I was also told, stay in line, put your hands behind your back, bend over, and spread your cheeks. And they're not even cool about it. So you can understand why I wasn't open to hearing what anybody said, especially prison staff, when it came to regards of what I should or shouldn't do. However, because Mr. Morrison approached me in a way of communication, caring, interest, and listening, I was open and receptive to his message. When he leaned forward, looked me right in the eye, and said, "Do you want to keep doing this prison shit? Or do you want to learn something cool?" Well, yeah, I want to learn something cool. What do you know? When you decide to start investing in someone, it is important to communicate with them in a way that is caring and understanding. Don't approach them like a savior or someone who has the answers to fix them. Look, we all have egos. We're all sensitive. And for most of us, it's really hard to ask for help. So if you want results, well, you're going to have to start thinking of the other person first. Once you do that, it's time to start investing. For a year and a half, Mr. Morrison met with me once a month. But first, he made a deal with me. If I stayed out of trouble and tried some of the programs he suggested, like anger management and Toastmasters, which, by the way, totally paid off, then he would teach me how I could become the man I want to be. He would teach me how to take control of my life. And listen up, this is important. When you decide to commit your time and energy into someone, you must set guidelines and expectations too. These expectations are the price for your investment, and they hold the relationship accountable. Once Mr. Morrison realized, hey, this guy's not going to be a knucklehead anymore, he started to send me back to my cell with books on finance, self-improvement, and biographies of successful entrepreneurs. He would also tell me why he thought I was valuable and what he saw in me by saying things like, I'm excited to see what difference you're going to make in the world someday. I see a leader in you. When you're investing, it is important for you to tell who you're investing in the value that you see in them. Because a lot of times, we don't see it ourselves. We need people to tell us this. Mr. Morrison saw in me someone who was willing to do whatever it took to survive and fit in. But he saw this as a skill to nourish in a positive direction. So he led me to influence others and do whatever it takes to influence others in a healthy direction instead. And here we are. You don't have to be a prison counselor or a therapist to be an investor. Each one of you can take advantage of this opportunity and explore it. Take our longtime family friend, Carol Freed. This is a picture of me and her husband, Roger, and her when they came to visit me while I was in prison. Carol passed away a couple weeks ago, but she lived a life of purpose. She was an effective investor because she looked for ways to help others that mattered to them most. For me, she wrote me a letter every month while I was in prison. That's 70 letters full of encouragement, quotes, thoughts to challenge me, comics and jokes to make me laugh. Even after I got out, she followed up with me. She was making sure her investment was staying on track. You could take a page out of her book right now and start investing simply by picking up the phone and making a call, send an email, text, hey, even write a letter, just to create that connection. So what's the value in all this investing? What's the ROI? Well, it looks different for everybody, but take me for an example. Because of people who invested in me, my life has dramatically changed. For starters, I'm standing here on this TED stage talking to you instead of being locked in a box somewhere. Thank you. But not only that, since I've been out of prison for 18 months, I've had the opportunity to start 2 businesses, work with 2 other companies to help them grow. I attempted to start a nonprofit before I was ready. And it's still on the docket. It'll happen. I've started writing a book. I'm creating a long-term prison reform plan because it needs to happen. And best off, I get to invest in others now. And you know what else? I'm actually able to develop healthy relationships with the people I love now. My friends, parents, my girlfriend, my brothers, my sisters, my family. They can all be proud of me now. You can have that influence on someone too. You can create that. Now are you ready? You now know how to identify someone to invest in by their desire to leave the rock bottom life they're living in. You also know how to approach them with care and understanding. And you also know that when you start to see their potential shine, to direct that value into something worthwhile. So here's my challenge to you. That person that you were thinking of over these last few minutes, give them a call, invite them out to a cup of coffee. If they're in prison, write them a letter. Meet with them, sit down and connect with them. Listen to them, ask them questions, and engage and relate to them by sharing your experiences. And when that meeting's over with, set a date for another meeting. Do not part ways without both of you knowing when and where you're going to meet again. Because this gives us something to look forward to. And we all know when we're at rock bottom, there are a few things to look forward to. Each one of you can do this. And you will soon start to see their potential shine. And remember, the world will quickly forget you, no matter how wealthy you are. But you will forever be remembered for how many nobodies you helped become a somebody. Thank you. Thank you.